In a video game landscape where a lot of games are so picked apart, we very rarely get games like Doom. And I don't mean things like Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal, or hell, even Doom 3. I mean Doom, as in the original one. We don't get games that define a genre, games that completely break the norm and just recreate the gaming scheme. Why is that? Is it because of gameplay? I don't think so. Is it because of maybe reviews? I mean, duh, but come on now. I always think it's because of design, not coding, not lighting, not shadows. Design in the most basic sense. What the enemies wear, what the main character wears, what the world looks like. I could take a Crash Course dummy, put it in the middle of Elden Ring, and would it even still be the same game? I mean, sure, you could still give it as many armor as you want, put any weapon in his hand. Where's the uniqueness of the character creation, right? And that goes the same for the enemies. Imagine instead of Margit the Fallen, whatever the hell his name is, you're fighting a bunch of pixels. You don't want that. Now, before you guys go right into the comments talking about how I'm so wrong and how this and that and this, I want you to think about one enemy from a game that you love. Let's take something like Dark Souls, for instance. You could say any of the enemies. You can remember what they look like. You can remember what they do. You can remember how angry they made you, but, I mean, really, can you remember their names? I mean, aside from the Black Knight, I can't. Maybe Silver Knight, can't. There are enemies in Doom that you could easily forget, that you could easily not take into consideration. But when I say design is everything, when I say the Cacodemon, you think of that big floating ball shooting energy balls at you. And maybe I should say the Imp. No, you're gonna always think of what the Imp looks like. Even if I put the silhouette of it on the screen, you're gonna think and know what it looks like. Brown creature, throws fireballs at you, orange eyes, and boy, if I say something like the Cyber Demon, something just clicked in everybody's head, right? This is why Doom matters. This is why the designs of Doom matter. A couple of months ago, I started a video about why I believed that the designs in Doom are so good. And that video has been scrapped because I didn't put work into it. I didn't actually play any of the games that I was talking about. I didn't talk about any of the games that I was talking about. I just talked about my own designs primarily, which of course I'll do today, but not exactly in the same way. I do genuinely want to break down enemies, put them into different categories, show you why these enemies mean a lot to me, why they mean a lot to everyone. Whether you play Doom or you don't, you know who they are. But of course, I can't code. I can't get on a computer and type in code that could make the next best Doom game, the next best rail shooter with the best enemy designs ever. But I can draw. I can put on paper what I personally believe would be something that could be the next Doom. Now, that's not me tooting my own horn. Listen, I'm the number one guy who doesn't defend my artwork or doesn't defend my creativity. But, YouTube's for fun, so why not have a little fun on here? So, today, I'm going to be going over Doom enemies. Not only that, but I am going to be making my own. Not in Doom, of course, but I will be taking inspiration from Doom, maybe even a few story points, and concocting my own little world of strange creatures that the main character, who just so happens to be a silent protagonist with a mask on and body armor with an assorted variety of strange guns. Really. I hope you stay around, because we're gonna go talk about some Doom.
Against all the evil that hell can conjure, all the wickedness that mankind can produce, we will send unto them only you. Rip and tear until it is done.
Hello everybody, my name is Free Creature, and welcome back to a brand new video, where, man, it's good to be back after, 2 months at this point? Hopefully it won't be 3, but today, we're going to be talking about something a little different. Well, for starters, we're going to be talking about something. This is a new style of video I plan on doing, where I just go and make art based off of things that I really enjoy, which today, we're going to be starting off this first episode, I guess you could call it, with Doom. But why Doom? Other than the fact that I've been playing through it like a psychopath for the past, 2 weeks at this point? That and Resident Evil, but we'll go over that later. Doom. It defined a genre, dropping in the year of our Lord, December 10th of 1993. Doom was met with a good amount of praise, being played by millions of people who enjoyed the graphical push, the amount of gore, and I'm just pulling this out of my ass here, but probably the enemy designs. I mean, Doom truly was that game that nobody had ever seen before. It is strange to look back on it, look back on how much Doom has changed, yet stayed the same. Whether that's looking at Doom Eternal, or what was basically an experiment with gaming, Doom 3. Really? What do I think about it? Doom 1's fine. It's not a bad game. It's not a good game. I think it's a perfect mix between what people needed and what people wanted. It was a push for something different. And I mean, it even started a spin-off title known as Quake, which basically followed the exact same gameplay scheme, but instead of demonic creatures, you were now in a 3D world killing demonic creatures. Until Quake 2, where you started killing cyborgs in space. You know what? We'll talk about that maybe some other time. Not now, though, because right now I want to talk about demons. You know, it's a weird concept. It's very, very, very strange to talk about demons. So, what makes Doom so easy? Let's go to different games. Let's look at a game called Agony. Its demons are a little bit more, how do I say this? Show-offy. Because something about these demons doesn't feel as, cool as Doom. And I mean, of course, they're not exactly supposed to look cool. They're supposed to look a little more, I guess, vagina-y? I don't know. I played the game for 5 minutes and then stopped because it wasn't very good. But the thing about Agony and Doom is that you can't really compare them from a gameplay standpoint, from a weapon standpoint, from a combat standpoint, because objectively they are just basically 2 different games. But something I can compare is the enemy design. Because boy oh boy, is Agony's enemy design so basic. I mean, they just did the usual, we look like we're in pain, agony if you will. We're demons, we're gonna show off our body parts and scare you and stuff. There goes Satan. God, guys, it's Satan, guys. Ooh. But in reality, none of it's scary. I mean, its hell definitely pales in comparison to Doom's. And I mean, just in general, its enemies pale in comparison to Doom's. For one, they all look effectively the same. Same form, with horns, trying to look as gross as possible, some sort of wiener hanging out. I mean, it's just the same. There's no variety. It's all just demon generic number 1. I mean, the main enemies look the same as the boss enemies. The boss enemies look the same as Satan. And I find that so annoying. Because you really can go above and beyond with stuff like this. I mean, hell, the original Doom, which came out in 1994, once again, is so much better. You know, Doom is one of those games that you can go into without even knowing the story. Doom 2016, I don't even think I paid attention to the story until my second playthrough because I was too busy ripping apart demons. But one thing I can tell you is, I knew every one of those demons' names. I knew how to deal with them. I knew what they looked like. When I went into hell, the lighting was different, but I could see every single demon. And I'll even say that about Doom 3. I knew every demon's name, whether that be the Trites or the Ticks, which look virtually the same, but when I saw them, they looked different enough for me to realize that they weren't the same creature. Or the Imp, the Vagary, any of those. I could look at the Cyber Demon and look at something else like the Revenant and be like, oh, I know those. Why? What makes Doom's enemies so different? Well, what better place to start than with the Imp? I know what you're thinking, it just looks like some naked dude with spikes on him, but it's not. Once you kind of look at him more, he looks less and less and less humanoid. But I think that's one of the most defining features of the Imp. It is the most humanoid looking demon, and I said demon, not enemy. There are of course the zombie guards, but I mean demon. Because, demons in Doom have their own unique little thing going on. They all look significantly different while all looking like they're from the same place, from the same hell. Hell, I could even say that about the Doom 3 Imp, which keeps basically the exact same body type, it just changes the skin to gray and then adds a couple more eyes on the face. Other than that, you would know that this was the Imp right when you saw it. But why? I don't know. Maybe it might be because of its movement patterns, the fact that you see it first. It's the first demon you see in every single Doom game because from the start of the game, you're just fighting possessed people. If you've never touched Doom before, you might just think you're just going to be fighting the same armored guard type guys. But I want to bring your attention to a scene from Doom 2016 that always got to me. Not in a scary way, but in a oh shit, it's about to go down type way.
Demonic presence at unsafe levels. Lockdown.
Did you see that? It was quick, to the point. It didn't spend time trying to build up this creature. It put it right in your face. It showed you what these demons were about. This thing crawls from the ceiling after you had just got done killing multiple undead people. You see your first enemy, which is inhuman. This thing, this monster, is not from here, and you can see that right when you look at it. No other enemy had done that at this point. No enemy had crawled on the wall. No enemy had screamed at you in that way. No enemy looked like that. There were armored enemies, but one thing I've made this enemy stand out is that it crawled from the ceiling, and the first thing you realize is it has no weapon. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, the zombies don't have any weapon. Yeah, but you're gonna look at a zombie and be like, okay, not many zombies are smart enough to have weapons. The zombie guards, they have weapons. The other things have weapons. Things have been shooting at you this whole time. So when you see this thing crawl off the wall and scream at you, it's almost as if it's challenging you. A creature that is significantly smaller, a creature that is significantly weaker, challenging somebody like the Doomslayer. It shows you instantly that demons are not afraid of you. They want to try and kill you, but they are going to die trying. Now, why did I start with the Imp other than the fact that it's the first enemy? For one, it's not even my favorite design, but it at least does start us off on a pretty good note. Going back to what I said earlier, I think Doom does have great enemy design. And even with something as simplistic as the Imp shows that. Something that has an extraordinarily simple design can still be brought out in such a way that you know what it is right when you see it. You want to know more about it right when you see it, right? Well, might as well get to this part of the video while we're still at the beginning. Let's go and look at my own story for a second. Now, before I get too deep into my story, I want to start talking about why and how I decided these enemies' designs. Well, first, I kind of put them into categories, like I did with Doom, because there are enemies in Doom that you kind of know where they come in, whether that be the imp and zombie guards at the beginning, the cyber demon in the middle or the end, or the spider mastermind as the big final boss. Where do all of these fit? So I put a lot of thought into what categories these things would go into, with little small demons who you can kill with stuff like the chainsaw being in the first category, things like barons of hell being in the second category, and things such as high level enemies or bosses being in the third category. And yeah, I guess it's about time to talk. Now, when looking at the designs for Doom, I didn't want to copy it too much. I wanted to have my own flair to it. So, when looking at the imp, I was like, it's simplistic. It looks so right, yet it's so bland at the same time. How did they do this? It doesn't even look bad, yet it's so minimal. And I'll be honest, I didn't know how they do it, so I kinda made something off the dome. This is the Violator. I created this to be the first enemy that you see in this so-called made-up story that will never be made, but we have art for it. So, this guy has a little whip arm, which, I mean, he can hit you with. He has that, little mouthy mouth at the top of his head, and I mean, he could probably shoot energy balls like an imp. I mean, honestly, I haven't really thought through this one as much, but I mean, you know, first enemy, first thing. Does that make sense? I don't think that makes sense. That doesn't make much sense, does it? Alright. This enemy is actually called the Jester. This is also going in category 1, of course, but this was supposed to be a lot more of a experimental type drawing. It was supposed to be in the same sort of vein of the Revenant, which, I mean, I kind of tried with having it have something that a lot of the others don't have, kind of just having like that thing on the top of its head, which I'd assumed, or I believe would be cool, that if they spit fire out of the top of it, like they created a fireball and just boom, 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 into other things. But honestly, I feel like it would work a lot like the Revenant. It would sort of move around, not as fast as something like the Violator. The Violator would be a lot quicker. It would maybe even use its little whip arm to swing from like the scaffolding of whatever building you're in. And yeah, the Jester would be a little slower. It would still be able to move around you and shoot things at you, but it would be a lot easier to hit. Going for the face, of course, that little smiley, strange, weird, bulbous little... It's something to shoot at, right? And it's something that I feel like definitely a game like this would need. Okay, so this design was a little bit different. Now, I did take a lot of my own liberties with this. Of course, with it being called Arachnid, the first thing you're gonna probably think of is, oh, it's an Arachnotron. Which, yeah, the main body of it definitely was inspired by an Arachnotron. Duh, what do you think I am? Stupid enough to think that I could just get away with that? No. But I feel like this would be a lot more like a Hell Knight type deal, where it is basically a much bigger version of the Violator, just like the Hell Knight is a much bigger version of the Imp. It's a heavier version of the base demon enemy, which these guys aren't called demons. I don't know what they're going to be called. Maybe I'll call them, I can call them Sinisters. But yeah, I basically created this monster, this creature that stood heads above the main character, that had the screaming mouth in its stomach that would maybe maybe deafen you, maybe had a tongue that would come out and just... When it comes to stuff like a Doom like such as this, you're gonna want a progression in enemy. And you can't just keep the same base enemy. I mean, even in stuff like Resident Evil and Quake, you'll have enemies that are just stronger versions of base enemies. I mean, that's what you get when you get something like a liquor. Like a liquor compared to a zombie, or a parasite zombie compared to a zombie. They're just natural progressions that aren't too hard, but they're definitely a step up. And that's what the arachnid is supposed to be. Can it climb on walls? No, it's too big. Just like how the Hell Knight can't climb on walls. I know the Arachnotron, I don't think the Arachnotron can crawl on walls. I think it can move around walls. I think it jumps and stuff, but like crawl on walls, I don't think it does that, right? So this guy kind of just yells at you and hits you with his big tongue while also trying to ram into you. Is it gonna hurt? 100%. Enemy 4, we have the Cackler, which my friend actually pronounced the Cocker, which I was so close to naming it that, but she was wrong. It's called the Cackler. Ooh, that would have been funny. But this enemy is a sessile enemy, somewhat like the Super Gornest or the Weezer from Doom, from Dead Space, not from Doom. You almost got me. And this thing basically is sort of like a mixture, actually, between a Super Gornest and a Summoner. And when I say Summoner, that we all know we mean Archvile. I don't mean Summoner. I'm not a pleb to this game. I've played Doom. I love Doom. Okay, but this is basically a mix between the Summoner and the Archvile and the Super Gornest. By the fact that it only is kind of like the Super Gornest because when you kill it, enemies spawn, right? But if you get too close to it, enemies also spawn. Now, it's sort of a 50-50 because I did actually think this out. I didn't just make it so, hey, there's no reason to even keep it alive or kill it. You can't just run past it. You gotta kill it, because if you don't kill it, it can summon larger enemies such as the Arachnid or something we'll get into later. But if you do, it'll summon a lot smaller enemies, like stuff like the Violator or the Jester, which you wanna be sorta not, if it comes to fighting an Arachnid or a Violator, I'd probably want to fight the one that's considerably smaller, right? But the thing about the Cackler is it will let out a high-pitched cackle, which will alert other Sinisters, which we're gonna call them, to your location. And until it is dead, they're gonna keep coming. Now, moving to the fifth and first boss of this theoretical game, the Mastermind. Okay, listen. I did not make this from the Spider Mastermind, of course. The only real thing that I took from this was the fact that it's called the Mastermind, and the fact that it can get into your brain, unlike the Spider Mastermind, which I don't know why they would name the Spider Mastermind something like the Spider Mastermind, make it a massive brain and not have it have telekinetic powers. But as you can see, it is basically a giant brain with a dude suspended from it. Now that dude, of course, is not really with us anymore, I'll say that. But, yeah, this is basically what I guess you could say the Cyber Demon is in Doom, because not Cyber Demon, my apologies. I had to come back. I had to switch back. I did not mean Cyber Demon, I meant Baron of Hell. Where you fight two of them as bosses, but later they're just normal enemies, right? Like they're this big bad boss, but then they become normal enemies. Now, how does this happen, right? Basically, you kill this thing, and the consciousness of the Mastermind would move to a different person, connect to the ceiling of something, and now you gotta kill it again. Or you could even compare it to the Vagary from Doom 3, where you fight one of them first, then you gotta fight two of them later. And they're not bosses this time, right? But you come back with stronger weapons and you kill the secondary version. Now, do I have an idea of what at all this boss fight would be like? maybe I feel like it would have telekinetic powers similar to the vagary, while maybe also being able to summon smaller demons, like much smaller demons, like beginning of the game type demons, like the Violator, like the Violator though, like nothing else. It would only be Violators, or like in the Doom 3 boss fight, the final boss with the Cyber Demon, where it's just summoning sort of what are those things called? Are they called leeches? Leeches, right? Maggots. They are called maggots. It summons, it's like the Doom 3 final boss fight with the Cyber Demon, where it summons imps and maggots. They're not called leeches. I'm stupid. It's okay. I feel like it should be able to move around the room with those tentacles on the top of its head, but it's a 50-50 for me because I'm not really sure, because I don't know how that would work, like in-game. Because, I mean, the combat would be fast-paced, but maybe you could have, like, a slowdown type timer, like you could with the Heart of Hell or the mechanic, or you could sort of slow down time and shoot enemies in Doom Eternal. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Now, despite its name, it actually is not based off of the Baron of Hell. I know what you're thinking. It's called the Baron. It looks pretty big and pretty scary. I mean, look at its arm. It actually is more based off of something more so like the Mancubus or the Bruiser. More so the Bruiser from Doom 3. And I mean, kind of see it with the fact that it has like that gun on its arm. But when I say that it's sort of based off of the Bruiser, I mean that it just shoots things, and it's based off the Bruiser more so because it's stronger, it's bigger. And I mean, like, of course, the Mancubus did it first. The Mancubus is the essential big, fat, bullet sponge enemy that you gotta shoot a bunch of times while it's shooting back at you. And yes, it is basically a evolution of a Violator, just like the Mancubus is. It's the first demon, other than basically the Revenant, that shoots things at you like avidly with a weapon, not like with its hands, not with fireballs where it has to throw them. No, I mean it is shooting at you with weapons. And how do you take care of this? Man, look, just go look up the Doom 3 Bruiser and the Doom 2016 Mancubus. It's a bullet sponge that you just gotta throw bullets into until it stops moving. Don't shoot the metal part on its hand, because that won't work. Now, ignoring the number, this is actually the 6th enemy you'd be coming in contact with. This thing, of course, is very much based off the Baron of Hell. And yes, I know it says enemy 5. I'm sorry about that. This just was in the order that I drew them in, so I was kind of just putting enemy without sort of thinking where they would come in the story. But this is the Minotaur. This thing is literally basically just the Baron of Hell. Now, when I say that, can it throw energy things? No. Can it take a lot of damage? Absolutely, it can take a lot of damage. It is the direct evolution of something like, let's say, the Arachnid. Now, I don't mean that in the literal terms like in Doom, where the Hell Knight and the Baron of Hell, one is the weaker version, one is the better version. I mean, it quite literally is kind of just the same thing. Like, can it climb on walls? No. But can it move out of the way from your attacks? Absolutely. Can it tank your attacks much more than something like the Arachnid? Absolutely. Now, something I actually did want to have it do is have a ram attack where it just sort of charges at you like a bull, mixing together something like the Pinky, which would be the time that you could sort of attack it with some real damage. Because of course you could attack it like full on, just shoot it, but it's a bullet sponge and you don't want to waste all your ammo, right, on one single monster. Or you do, because it's a pretty big monster and you don't want to get killed by it. But when it rams towards you, I'd assume that it would hit its head, armor would crack off the top of it, and then you could start shooting its head for better damage, right? And I honestly don't think this should be a boss first. I think it should just be a really hard enemy. Now, back to being on an actual decent numbering scheme. This is the Tortured. This is your quintessential sort of backup bully character. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why have this when you have something like, oh, I don't know, the Minotaur? I don't really know what exactly it would be based off of. Now, I definitely wanted it to be based off something more like the Pinky, with it having an exposed part that you have to shoot to actually hurt it. But I kind of did that already with the Minotaur, but not as much, of course, because, of course, you can just do that with any kind of enemy. It's gonna be a lot more like the Pinky in the way that it's just sort of a raging bull of an enemy. Unlike the Minotaur, it won't exactly care about other enemies. It can attack other enemies, and I feel like that's just sort of what I was going for, with it having one eye that's sort of just like bulbousing out of its head. This is your psycho enemy. Now, before we go into the end of section 2, I want to make something very clear. The Mastermind is not the same as the other bosses I'm going to go through at the end of the video, because I wanted to save the real bosses for the end. Why did I do that to the Mastermind then? Because the Mastermind, like I said, is a boss at first, but it slowly starts becoming an enemy as you get better weapons. As you keep getting more weapons, you keep getting to kill the Mastermind quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. So it becomes less of a challenge and more of just a roadblock in your way. Now, also, we're going to start going into enemies that aren't based off of one Doom enemy, but multiple. This last one is a mix of a few things that are primarily actually in Doom 3. In Doom 3, there were 2 different imp variations. In the main game, there was the regular imp, but in Resurrection of Evil, the imp came back, but with a sort of new buddy. His name was the Vulgar. Unlike the imp, they were much faster, they ran on all 4s primarily, and you would be seeing them a lot more than the regular imps. They would be shooting fireballs at a much quicker rate, and they would hurt a lot more when you got hit by them. I wanted to make a variant, not a variant, but a sort of like connection piece to the Violator, and I call it the Homunculus. These creatures have faces on their chests, as you can see, but yeah, they're gonna basically be taking up more of a bigger role as the Violator gets phased out a little bit, because it just becomes way too weak for a later game. Which I know, yeah, that's one of the points of Doom. You feel stronger with every weapon you get, but it feels a lot better when you're killing bigger enemies with those weapons and you're killing them quick. So you want enemies that are going to be just as strong, so you can feel just as strong ripping them apart. So, do I have a lot of an idea for this enemy? Not really. It kind of like probably will have the same moveset, sort of will be quick, will be hitting you a lot. I don't know if I wanted to shoot anything, but eventually I might come back to it, and with a lot more lore. So, yeah. Now, these last 2 enemies sort of go hand in hand, so I'll sort of be switching back and forth between them. So, this enemy I call the Inverted. Similar to how you go into Hell in Doom 3, you go into a completely different dimension in this theoretical game. Now, will you be fighting versions of my enemies before? Yes, but they'll be inverted, as in the background is now completely pitch black and they're now whited out, right? You now have to shoot these things with an assorted variety of weapons to actually kill them. Now, do I actually know what weapons you would have to shoot them with? Not really. I'm not exactly finished with a lot of the weapons, but if I continue this, hopefully I'll get a lot more out. But yeah, these things act a bit like pinkies charging towards you, but they also have sort of the agility of something like an imp or a Violator, as we're going to start connecting the 2. As you can see, it's pretty inhuman looking, which is exactly what I kind of wanted, because in the Doom remake series, their Hell doesn't really have different enemies. Like, I mean, it has different enemies, but the enemies don't look different. But in Hell and Doom 3, all of the enemies look like they are completely and utterly being burnt alive, tortured, and whatever. And I kind of wanted them to look different in this world, because you can't have a black background with black lined characters on it, right? Now, when it comes to the Inverted, you can't have the Inverted without the Void Slaughterer. This thing is basically I'm not going to say the Baron, because I don't want it to be as strong as the Baron, because the thing about the Baron in the main game is that they are the big enemy. That's why you only see 1 or 2 of them in an area, because they are so strong. I would say this is much more like the Arachnid, or what I base the Arachnid off of, the Hell Knight. This thing is a lot more like the Hell Knight. It can shoot sort of like these inverted energy balls at you. They're just sort of like white balls. Think of like a white ball, just a white ball made out of squiggles and lines and scribbles. That's basically what it shoots at you. It does pretty good damage and all that. And shooting at the black parts on its body, of course, are the things that are going to kill it, which makes it sort of a mix between the Hell Knight and the Pinky. I mix a lot of things with the Pinky simply because I kind of like the idea that you have to shoot the fleshy part of its back to get it to die. Now, aside from the Mastermind, there are more bosses. Like in Doom, I didn't want to put too many bosses in there because, of course, I mixed the concept of the Baron of Hell and the Spider Mastermind together to sort of create an enemy that was going to be a sort of big deal, but also becomes an enemy at the end. So I did want to make but I did want to make the boss roster pretty small, so when you did run into a boss, it was a big deal, right? So first, we have the Nameless Woman. Now, there are not 4 bosses in this, but I am going to show you what she looks like when she mutates, because, of course, as you can see right here, she says, she is not human, or, to quote exactly, human, you dare call me human. Now, what does that mean? Now, to think of somebody like Olivia Pierce from the games, I really did want this like mad scientist character. And it wasn't specifically because of Olivia Pierce, it was actually because of Dr. Betruger. I like the idea of a woman being the main villain and becoming this like amalgamation monster that was really running the entire invasion. But I also liked the idea that they also were going crazy due to interference from a different dimension. Now, she says she's not human, and as you can see, her entire body is covered by what looks to be an armored shell. He breaks out of that shell, the Annihilator is born. Now, you'll recognize on a lot of these boss enemies, you'll realize their names are not written on here, because, I mean, dude, in most of the Dooms, you actually don't really see the enemies' names. And I mean, like, I kind of like the fact that you can kind of like look at it and you don't really know what its name is, because they're not really like registered, or nobody knows what they actually are because they haven't been studied. But this is what I have deemed the Annihilator. This thing is gigantic, stands heads over the main player, who is significantly shorter than many of the enemies, but this thing is titanic. As you can see, it has weak points on its body, those little black scribbly things that you gotta shoot, but also you gotta make sure that you don't get ran over by her running at you. You don't get hit by these little tentacles on the side of her body, and man, you also pretty much don't want to fight the thing, because those little holes on its body, they close up whenever she gets really mad for a few minutes. Moving over to an inverted boss, I wanted this to be more like the Guardian from Doom 3, and honestly from Doom 2016. This creature is mindless. It's not moving of its own volition. It kind of is just a cog that helps the greater planner of this all get what he wants. And you'll see that final boss in a second, but this is what I like to call the inverted Guardian. I really didn't I didn't really think of this one as much, because it kind of has I wanted it to sort of have this same sort of feel as the Guardian from Doom 3, where you have to kill these smaller enemies so you can attack it. It's gonna have inverted running around, and that's what it sees through. Their eyes is what it sees through. So when you kill the inverted, it's going to open its eye and start creating more inverted. That's when you shoot it in the eye. And what is it going to attack with? No clue. I'll come back to you on that one later. This is the final boss from the entire campaign. The one thing you don't want to come in contact with. This is something I like to call the Master. Not the Mastermind, the Master. And I know that's sort of a weird name considering I just called something the Mastermind, but it is sort of a placeholder name until I can really get it sort of figured out. But this thing stands literal miles above any of these other monsters. I based it more so off the Maledict, or Dr. Petruger from Resurrection of Evil. I wanted it to be very bat-like. I wanted it to not look like any other of these demons, because the Maledict doesn't look like it doesn't look like any of the demons from Doom 3. It looks more like a medieval dragon. And I wanted this thing to look nothing like the other enemies in this theoretical game. Do I have a lot of attacks for it? Not really. Do I have a lot of lore for it? Not really. But it is supposed to be this giant world-ending threat that the main character must deal with. And I hope that's enough for you guys when it comes to the monsters, because now we're going to move on to the main character, and that'll be about it. This is character, the main character. This guy is an altered human. As you can see, the thing on its face, many people are probably going to be like, what the heck is that? That is actually what keeps his organs in, if that makes sense. So basically, in the story, an altered human created by that psychotic lady from the beginning, who transformed into the Annihilator, basically was being carried out so they could create super soldiers using the creatures from this alternate dimension, this alternate inverted dimension, to basically create super soldiers, like I said. Now, how did they do this? They basically would cut you open. They would stick all of the intestines from one of these monsters inside of you, and then this thing on the mouth is actually an artificial heart and respiratory system. They would connect everything onto it, stick it onto your face. You now have an impenetrable soldier who is supposed to follow orders, who is now basically forced to be alive, because this thing on their mouth is actually forced to their mouth. It's bonded to their mouth. It's unable to come off. So, similar to Doom Guy, I wanted him to not be able to talk, and that's the reason. He literally has no lips or mouth to be able to talk. If he takes this thing off, or manages to figure out some way to take it off, he's going to die instantly, and he doesn't want that. So, yeah. I mean, he also sort of has this, like, massive grudge against the lady, so he wants to make sure that none of this happens to anybody else. So he goes and he starts destroying things. He goes on a rage trip to basically make sure that this lady doesn't allow any of this to happen again, and make sure that all of these monsters die the way they should, being ripped apart, of course. Do you think they were going to die normally? No. Well, yeah, that was my story, based off of Doom, which I have given the strange name of Sinister for now. May change in the future, but I still sort of haven't really gone over why I chose Doom. Why out of every game, Resident Evil, Dino Crisis, Alone in the Dark, Silent Hill, did I not choose monsters that were truly something scary? Truly something that would leave a lasting impact on it. It's hard to explain, honestly, why Doom is so influential to me, why I like the enemy designs of Doom. Out of every game, I picked Doom to make a video out of first. If I were to come up with an answer, I would say Doom's monster design is something you don't see a lot. You don't see so much care put into every bit of every monster. Even with something like Resident Evil, they'll look the same, virtually the same. But the monsters in Doom, every single one of them look different. They make sure to go the extra mile, make sure these monsters have a unique feel. It's why you remember them so well. It's why I remember them so well, because they're unique. They're special. Every demon in this game has their own feel. The Imp to the Cyber Demon to the Maledict. Enemies from Doom 3 even look different from each other, whether that just be small changes, like with the Trite and the Tick. It's something you don't see in a lot of video games, with the same sort of enemy design for each game that sort of just don't really bring anything else to the table. You don't see much unique enemy design. Going back to Agony, like I said, every enemy looks the same, but there are a few games, Dead Space, some Resident Evils, some Silent Hills, who have different enemies that make you really, really, really remember them. Whether that be from Doom, whatever other video game you love, I always think that enemies are the first thing that you're gonna see, so why not make it worth it? So that's why I chose Doom. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you actually enjoyed it, because this time I genuinely did enjoy making this video, because if I don't even remember if I said this at the beginning of the video, I tried making a video on Doom 3 and it just didn't really turn out the way I wanted it to. It was really well edited. It was gonna be a more video essay type style on why I love the designs of Doom 3, but then I played Doom 3 and I was like, I'm not enjoying myself making this video on a game I don't actually enjoy, because I was singing every praise of Doom 3 when I just genuinely didn't like it. So I came back, I rewrote everything, I redrew everything more specifically, and I remade the video. This has been The Free Creature. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a comment, or drop a like, or subscribe. I would much rather you drop a comment because I just enjoy interacting with people. Anyway, I'm back. No more interruptions between my videos. I'll be on a pretty front and center schedule now. Expect to see from me pretty much every week for the next few months. And yeah, hope you all have a great day. I'll see you later.